managing your property management, here's 3 keys that you need to understand as a multifamily owner to make sure you're protecting your investment when you're hiring a third-party manager. So one of the most common things that I hear from a lot of investors is the fact that their investment went bad because they had a bad property manager. So picking a great property manager is key, but even a great property manager, an investor should never just hand it over and never think about it again. A good investor should stay involved and monitor their property manager, which is called asset management, in order to make sure that they're doing a good job and that your investment is protected. So make sure you avoid the horror story by doing these 3 key things. So the first one is when you set up your management with your investor, don't just have the management agreement. You need to provide them with a owner's directive document. So this is going to cover things like how often you expect communication, what monthly reports that you're expecting to receive from them, what your target rents are for the different units they're going to be managing for you, how often you expect that or how long that it's acceptable for you for a vacancy to be filled before that rent is dropped, where the units are going to be advertised, and so on. Some of that stuff might be covered in their management agreement, but if it's not, you need to make sure that you're addressing it with an owner's directive that you give to them, being proactive to make sure they understand what your expectation is for your properties. The second thing is when you get those monthly reports, make sure you're looking at them and monitoring and interpreting that data. So one of the most common things is that maintenance costs can really take away from an investment owner's return. So looking at each one of the maintenance calls, how are they handling that when they are called out, and making sure that any expenses that are incurred, if you have vacancy, how long it's sitting vacant, what are the costs when they are turning the unit. Pay attention to those things because the property manager's likely managing hundreds of units, and it's hard for them to really be dialing in on the key details of knowing your properties as well as you know them. So it's your job to review those reports and say, hey, based on our historical vacancy, this unit has been vacant way longer than the other vacancies we normally have. What's going on? And it could be like, hey, that's because we increased the rent $100 a month that we're asking, and we're really getting junk people who are applying for this. So you might have a conversation with your manager and say, okay, let's take the rent down a little bit, hopefully get some more quality people, fill this thing up. So it's your job to review those reports and be proactive with the data in communicating to your manager. And the third thing is that you need to push for rent increases and lease renewals. So some good property managers will have this kind of built in where they'll say like, hey, every time a renewal comes up, we approach the tenant, make sure that they're aware, offer them a higher month-to-month rent or a lower rent if they sign a lease renewal. That's a really positive way to offer that to tenants. And an even better manager will say like, hey, if you renew, if you really are going to go month to month, we'll let it go month to month until like September, October, and then you can only go, then you have to have 6 months until the spring because the wintertime market is much harder to lease in. So making sure that the expectation for rent increases and renewals in place is really important. And then you should, as an owner, be monitoring the rents in the market and then prompting your property manager, hey, I saw that over here, all these listings sold or leased for probably $75 more per unit than mine, and my unit's actually nicer. Make sure that you're encouraging them to increase those rents on a periodic basis, because a lot of times property managers, they're just, they got a lot of units. They'd rather just renew the tenants in place with just maybe, $20 increase instead of going after that higher rent. So you need to be on them and say, hey, I really am looking for at least a $50 rent increase. If you're going to renew this rent, here's what I'm looking for, and be proactive so that they, again, know your expectations. You know your rents, and you will be monitoring that to make sure that your value is protected. Because here's the thing, and this is a classic mistake. I see this all the time. If you don't increase your rents and you keep them flat for years, you will be losing out on all the potential rents that could be collected over that time, and decreasing the value of your building, because, of course, properties are valued on their income. So if you don't increase that income, you're actually depressing the value of your building, sometimes by hundreds of thousands of dollars. So please pay attention to your rents and make sure that you're monitoring those so that you are protecting your property values going forward. So bonus tip here, make sure that your property manager is doing at least yearly walkthroughs, and ask them to send you photos of those walkthroughs so you can monitor the condition. Because there's plenty of times that owners have been surprised that after 3 years the tenant moves out and it's just a disaster because something's been leaking, now it's growing mold, and something that is could have been a smaller repair now becomes a much bigger repair. So make sure that the managers do at least a yearly, if not every 6 months, walkthrough, and sending you documentation so that you can make sure the value of your property is protected. So I hope this video brought you some value. If so, please like, comment, and share. And if you're looking for investment real estate in Pennsylvania or Maryland, reach out to us. We're always happy to help.